Well, everybody, welcome into the Phillip Jordan Show. On today's show, I will be joined by Matt Lowe. We'll be discussing all things Auburn football coming out of the 41-12 loss to Penn State. What happened on Saturday, and where does the program go moving forward? We'll also talk about the Alabama Crimson Tide. They won 63-7 against Louisiana Monroe, but we'll look at Alabama moving forward after the Texas game. Where have they improved? Where they need to improve as Arkansas looms in a couple of weeks. We'll talk about the dominance of the Georgia Bulldogs, why they are better than they were last season, and we'll go around the rest of the SEC. You can check out the Phillip Jordan Show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, please follow, rate, and review. Leave a review. I will read it on a future edition of the show. You can also watch the show over on YouTube at the Phillip Jordan Sports YouTube channel. Just hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for all the notifications so you'll know when there's a new video, and leave a comment on the video. I'll read that on a future edition of the show as well. Everybody joining me on the show today is Matt Lowe, longtime friend of the program. You check him out on his brand new website, lowdownsports.com, and also he has a show on there, the Out and Up Show, where he talks all things college football and that stuff going on in the state. And Matt, I appreciate you coming on the show.
Hey, man, no problem, Phillip.
Oh, yeah, always good to have you on. We got plenty to discuss, especially with one of the teams in the state. Both teams in the state. It was an interesting day in the state of Alabama and college football overall on Saturday. But before we jump into all of that, tell everybody about the new website you got going. I know you hadn't had it going too long. I know I was on one of your first shows over there, but tell them about lowdownsports.com.
Yeah, I started this right before the season began, and I've had a couple of guests on, and I've been trying to just kind of wait and see how the season develops as far as getting any more new guests, but I'm putting on my lowdown each week, which gives predictions on top 25 games and some of the in-state schools as well. I also post SEC rankings that I'm doing weekly, and that'll probably be up tonight or tomorrow. And I'm doing player rankings too. I just started a list of players that I'm ranking as far as when I watch them and how I evaluate them. I'm doing like juniors and seniors. As far as it pertains to the upcoming NFL draft. So I got a lot to add on that because I'm moving some guys in that I watched over the weekend into the rankings for sure. So really excited about it. I'm having good responses so far, but just trying to build it. I know it's going to be a process, but I am excited about it.
Yeah, it's been really good stuff lately on there. And I did see that where you were ranking players too as well, and that's always, we always, when the season ends and after spring ball, always where these guys going to get drafted at, and that's always a fun thing too, because I think that's a big intersection. That's like, you do have people out there that only like college or only like the NFL, but that's the one thing where they both kind of collide. So that's always a fun thing to do, looking at the NFL draft, these players from that standpoint too.
Yeah, and I got a buddy, Rob Rang. He's been a scout before, and he used to do the draft stuff with us. And I'm going to have him on soon or probably at the end of the year and kind of get his take. I think he does his own thing now with the draft, but that's a really popular, storyline when it comes to football, especially before the NFL draft.
So we're 3 weeks in to the college football season, and it's one of the things when we came to the season, you have preconceived notions who's going to be good, who's not. I mean, a lot of those teams are still at the top, Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama. Those seem to be, going in with the class of the country, and it seems like that is going that way now. But what's just been some overall takeaways you've had from the first 3 weeks of the season?
Well, Georgia looks like a juggernaut. And as of right now, I would say that they're clearly the top team in the country. The SEC is going to be ridiculously tough for anybody to go undefeated, but I do think Georgia can. I like that Mississippi State team going into last week, but they kind of fell apart towards the end of that game. And I saw how LSU, everybody kind of buried them after week one, and they looked pretty good last week. And that game flipped on the fumbled punt there. And also Mike Leach going for it on 4th and 1 from the 50, and they were pretty much totally in control of that game. But so I was kind of surprised by them losing at LSU. I think Clemson's a pretty good team. Their defense is legit. So I think they're probably the lead dog in the ACC. Ohio State's a pretty good outfit, of course. We all know that. Alabama, I think they got some things to clean up. But, if I were to go ranking teams right now, hey, and USC, I've been really impressed with USC. And I wanted to see how their defense played last week. They got some playmakers on that side of the ball. And so, I mean, I would say I would say Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, USC, and Clemson. Those would be my top 5 right about now.
The only thing I guess I hold back with USC, I want to see them play a really physical team up front because I know they've got the good skill position players. They've got the quarterback, Caleb Williams. You got Jordan Addison on the outside. I guess I'm waiting for them to play one of those, which there's not a lot of that in the Pac-12. Probably your only thing you're going to see that's like that is Utah, maybe Oregon. But I have been holding back on them. But maybe they'll prove me wrong. But that's kind of like I've been with them, just up front. How will they handle that any physicality that another team can put on them? Which like I said, the Pac-12, you're not really going to see that unless you're talking about Utah.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I don't know if they play during the regular season. So if they do play, it'll be in the Pac-12 championship game. I might be wrong about that, but I don't think they played in the regular season. But yeah, I mean, heck, Oregon surprised me with their win over BYU. Heck, Bo Nix, I think he ran for 3 touchdowns, a pass for 2. So he looked like a different player. But of course, they got manhandled against Georgia. But those are the 3 best teams. But yeah, I mean, you got a point. But that Jordan Addison kid, he's tough, and their offensive line's pretty good. And I was looking at my notes that their defensive end, Solomon Byrd, he's a really good player. And number 18, their linebacker, he's like 6'7". I didn't write his name down. But he's a good player too. So we'll see what happens. But I think they're only going to get better as the season goes.
Yeah. Absolutely. We'll see. They may play Utah. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. But and maybe I'm buying into the villain of Lincoln Riley. I kind of made a big deal on Twitter and social media when he left Oklahoma to go to USC. So, you're just scared of the SEC homer here. I try to talk about all of it, but I do kind of sit in that homer position sometimes when it comes to the Southeastern Conference. But looking at the SEC, and we're going to lead off with the Auburn Penn State game. And last year this game was a really good game. Came down to the wire. Auburn loses 28-20. And going into this one, Auburn, obviously, this was a big game. You don't like to look at the third game of the season as a win, a must win. But I kind of went into it that way because I felt like this could be a momentum game for Auburn. And Bryan Harsin, first 5 games at home, you win this one, you should feel good going against Missouri and LSU. They lose 41-12. It was close at halftime, 14-6. Auburn did some good things, I think, offensively in the first half, but the second half just snowballed on them. You come out, you're not able to do anything. You have to punt after the first possession in the second half. Penn State scores a touchdown, and then there's a fumble. Penn State scores another. Then there's an interception. It just snowballed on Auburn. Just what are your thoughts on Auburn coming after this game? Because, I mean, obviously there's a lot of questions now about Bryan Harsin. Now what's his job security? I mean, we all kind of felt like going in. I think most people feel like it's going to take a lot for him to keep his job after this year, and that's not look good on that front. And just overall, just coming out of that game, what's your thoughts on Auburn Tigers?
Yeah, and for USC, they do play Utah. They go to Utah, so no mistake there on my part. But the offensive line for Auburn got pushed around. I think Penn State had 6 sacks. I mean, they had, I think, 11 tackles for loss. So, I mean, they were in the backfield the whole time. And P.J. Mustipher there, defensive tackle. Obviously, when you lose a guy like Nick Brahms at center, you got a guy like Mustipher who's 6'4", 215 pounds. And then you go to Tate Johnson, who's like 280-something pounds. That tells me right there that any elite defensive line that Auburn plays, they're going to have a lot of problems. And I honestly think they're going to need to try some new guys up there because when you get into SEC play, I mean, Ole Miss has a good defensive line. Texas A&M does. Arkansas, Georgia, Alabama. I mean, and if you can't block, then it doesn't matter what you have at the skill spots because it's just such a trouble spot. So I thought TJ Finley played pretty well, but then, and I thought a big play in that game was the end of the first quarter when the time ran off the clock. And the quarter was over, but the play went on, and he threw the interception there. That was a huge play in the game. And I was thinking to myself, did no coach see that? I mean, did you not see that the quarter expired? And would that have changed things? I don't know, but that was a big turning point in the game. And I was really the lack of usage from Tank Bigsby blew my mind. I think he said he had like 5-6 carries in the first quarter, and then he touched the ball in the second. I think they threw that one pass to him, and he ran for like 50-something yards.
Mm-hmm.
That guy, to me, is like, you got to get that dude the ball in space. He's your best player, so the minimum he should get 25 touches. I think that's just my opinion, but he's real. I hardly ever see Auburn run a screen for him, which I think a screen pass is one of the most effective plays in football, and you just don't see him run a lot anymore. Penn State ran the trick play with Sean Clifford, and look what they did with that.
Mm-hmm.
That was a brilliantly designed play. But they got a lot of problems, Phillip, and I thought the first 2 games they might have let Robbie Ashford throw the ball around a little bit more. I think he threw the interception against San Jose State, and they really didn't let him throw the ball more. The kid's he's a great athlete, but he hadn't played a lot of football the last couple of years. So why not try to get him some meaningful snaps throwing the football? But Auburn almost lost to San Jose State. They had 9 penalties. You go to this game, they can't block. They had another round of penalties. It's just a mess. And to be honest with you, if they lose to Missouri, where do you go and what do you do?
Yeah, you talk about, Tank Bigsby. I think I saw that he had the same amount of carries as TJ Finley. You need to ride that guy. You just need to ride that guy. Continue feeding the ball. And him and Jarquez Hunter, especially when if you can't pass block, and they couldn't. Like you said, 6 sacks, and then a couple of those pressures just wanted Finley fumbled the ball when he did. And you talk about where they go. They have Missouri, and if they lose Missouri, I hate to be super negative here about Auburn, but could we be seeing a team go 0-8 in the SEC? Because I'm looking at the schedule. You've got Missouri, and you got LSU. Then you're at Georgia, you're at Ole Miss, and then you're off. Then you have Arkansas at Mississippi State. You play Texas A&M at home, Western Kentucky, and then you play at Alabama. It's about to get tough on them schedule-wise. It's like I said, Missouri might be the best shot at a win here. And I went into it. They beat Penn State. You could beat Missouri. I said this, a few minutes ago. You beat LSU. You're 5-0 going into the Georgia game. You maybe can get 2 or 3 more wins. Get to 8 wins. I don't know if this team can be bowl eligible this year.
Right now, I'm in agreement with you. And I thought the defensive line was going to be the strength of Auburn's team, or one of them, and they got pushed around. Purdue played Penn State tight. And took Sean Clifford driving down the field at the end of the game. That was a great ball game. And, I'm with you. And you got the Cook kid from Missouri. He's a good dual threat quarterback. I don't know. It's just a mess. And I was like I said, I was shocked at how bad they got beat. And it looked kind of like they threw in the towel there after Penn State scored their 3rd touchdown. But I don't know where they go. And the guy who hired Bryan Harsin is no longer there. And, if this all plays out and barring something unexpected and Harsin does get fired, which, look, it's one game, they can get things cleaned up. They could. I just think you look at the SEC and you look at Ole Miss, who can run the ball, is a really good running team. And then you're not going to beat Georgia. You're not going to beat Alabama. Texas A&M's got a great front. Their offensive line isn't that great, but they're also replacing 4 or 5 starters. this has been a problem. The offensive line has been a problem at Auburn for the last, 3-4 years?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you had guys like Willie Anderson, Marcus McNeil. I mean, can you not go into a living room and say, hey, man, these dudes played here. These guys are all pros in the NFL. Come play here. It's just shocking to me that for whatever reason, Auburn can't find linemen. And it just kind of blows my mind. And another thing, too, with the situation at Auburn is the boosters, okay? And that's been going on for a long time. And, when Nick Saban got to Alabama, the same kind of stuff was going on in Alabama. But he got down there and he was like, all right, look, I'm running this football program, and that's the way it's going to be. You can give your money, you can donate, all this stuff, but I'm going to run this program the way I want to do it and leave me alone. And whoever Auburn hires as the athletic director, it's going to need to be an alpha, okay, that understands, because all the politics and all it's doing is hurting the program.
Mm-hmm.
Really, it's the truth. I mean, you can donate all this money and all this, but you're hurting the program, and it's the bottom line. And I don't know, it's a big mess down there, to be honest with you. And it has been for a while, And so, and another thing too, Phillip, is you don't think coaches talk to agents and other coaches. So let's just say Harsin does get fired and Auburn goes after Mark Stoops. You don't think Mark Stoops is going to call Bryan Harsin and be like, hey, man, can you tell me a little bit about what's going on down there?
Mm-hmm.
Dude, you don't want to come here. The boosters, all they do is politics. And I don't think for a minute that won't go on, because it will. And, it's thing of Brent Venables. I think Auburn was talking to Brent Venables and what he said about Auburn. I mean, and now he's at Oklahoma, winning games. And I mean, so people talk in the profession, and until I know those people want to do good for Auburn and all that, but until you just stay out of it, you're not doing any good, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Bryan Harsin's a good coach. I do too. I mean, and is that, I mean, obviously the boosters, his lays out from under them with everything that they've done, especially all the offseason stuff. And Gus Malzahn did not leave, a great situation either.
Nope.
Like at the offensive line, Gus Malzahn did not do a good job the last couple of years recruiting offensive line, and then it's really starting to show. And I think Auburn, like their top 8 offensive linemen, 6 are seniors. So unless they just really hit the portal, whoever's coach, Bryan Harsin, whoever's the head coach next year, unless they hit the transfer portal really hard this offseason, they're actually could be worse on the offensive line next season. And that's what's really scary about the whole situation. As bad as they look right now, they could be even worse next year if they don't really hit that portal hard this offseason.
And like, if you look at their recruiting, they get 4-star players, according to the recruiting experts. But, Austin Troxell, I think, was a pretty highly recruited kid. I mean, it blows my. And another thing too is like Landon King. Okay, he was the talk of spring. He was going to play this huge role. The dude makes a fantastic catch, and he's 6'5". So you get down by the goal line, you don't want to try to throw a jump ball to a dude that's supposedly the talk of spring and that's 6'5", 200-something pounds that you were going to do that with. I just don't, I don't understand some of the play calling from the offense or the defense. Like we were talking about before the show, Penn State gets by the goal line. Auburn's in an odd front with 2 of their defensive tackles up on the guards. And with one dude standing up on the right side, Penn State's got a sniffer on the left side. You got 6 on 4. They run a draw play. It was a great draw play, a little trap play, and Clifford doesn't even get touched. I mean, why are you running that kind of defense on the goal line when you got a guy like Jason Jones and Wood? I mean, it just stuff like that, and the usage of Bigsby but heck. Auburn could have Patrick Mahomes playing quarterback Saturday, and they probably wouldn't have won the game because the dude would have been getting killed. And it was the same way in that when the Chiefs played in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago with the Bucs, and their whole offensive line was hurt, and the Bucs just – I don't care how good a quarterback you are, you can't play laying on your back. It's just all there is to it.
Definitely can't. Let's transition to Alabama. And I won't stay too long. They played losing Monroe this past week, but kind of they won the week before against Texas, but obviously there was a lot of concern about Alabama coming out of that game. Like they survived against Texas, almost like they didn't beat Texas. And like I said, they beat Louisiana Monroe 63-7. Bryce Young had a solid game. 3 touchdowns, 236 yards. Will Anderson got his first career touchdown running at the end, and they even had a block punt there. Within 6 minutes, they're up 21-0. But just moving forward for Alabama, you got Vanderbilt this week, but then the next week is Arkansas. Arkansas's got A&M this week, and that's going to be a big game. That's going to be a big game for Alabama playing against Arkansas. Just your thoughts on Alabama so far. Seems like the offensive line may still be an issue with them. Receivers, we'll see somebody step up at that position. But just, your thoughts on Alabama as we move forward into these next few weeks.
Well, I was kind of like Auburn's defensive line. I was really shocked how they got pushed around by Texas. And they did. I mean, and like, once again, Bryce Young, I mean, that guy made some incredible plays at the end of that game to will them to victory. I mean, and, but you can push UL Monroe around. That's not hard. I mean, Vanderbilt, same thing, but Arkansas's front seven is pretty nasty. And Drew Sanders, who Alabama transfer, he leads the nation in sacks for Arkansas. He's got 5.5 sacks in that bumper pool. I mean, Jordan Dominic's a good defensive lineman, so that's going to be a tough game for him. But I think with Alabama, what you have at quarterback, their front seven is still pretty good. The defense, if it wasn't for the penalties against Texas, I thought the defense still played pretty good. Although Sarkisian had them pretty off balance early on before Quinn Ewers got hurt, which Sark's a great play caller. We saw that while he was at Alabama. He's a great play caller, and he gets his best players the ball like a good player caller does. So I do still think there are question marks. I like how they responded. After a loss, they came out with a lot of energy. They could have, but their coach probably, rode their butts pretty good in practice for a week, So there's still a lot of unknowns with them. And I think when they play Arkansas's secondary can be had through the air, So I think that's one thing. But you got to have guys that can catch the ball, plain and simple. And I think, the litmus test for them will be that game, as far as moving forward. But I do see Alabama losing the game somewhere along the way.
Yeah, it kind of – but one thing about them, I'll say this, they had the one quarterback in the country. If it's down to the wire, I want Bryce Young to be the quarterback because nothing rattles him. I mean, he stays the same from the first, second, third, and fourth quarter. And honestly, looking back at that game against Texas, it felt a lot like the Iron Bowl from last year to me. The offense didn't play great, but man, when the chips are down, I mean, give it to Bryce Young. He'll find a way to win it for you.
Yeah, and he did. He scrambled around and made plays for him. And he's really instinctive, inside the pocket. Like he feels pressure well. And that's just a God-given talent. You can't just teach somebody that. I mean, it's just God-given, and he's a great runner too. I mean, and so yeah, I mean, it was funny because the storyline, in that game is the kicker's last name was Auburn. He the one that the Auburn beats Alabama, but no, man, he willed them to victory, and anytime Alabama's in a tight game, I mean, Will Reichard's a weapon for them. And in years past, that's been a vulnerable spot there, for Alabama. But it isn't right now, and he's one of the best in the country, if not the best kicker. And he's great at kickoffs too. And Saban talks about him a lot, so that means he has a lot of respect for him.
Yeah, for the longest, Alabama could never find a kicker. And I used to hear somebody make the joke all the time that Nick Saban must have sold his soul to the devil. And he told me, you can have everything you want, but you can never have a kicker. And that was going to be the thing that cost you. But they've got one now. Georgia, dominant performance once again against South Carolina. South Carolina didn't score until what? Georgia had the JV squad out there. I mean, pretty much. Yeah. And look, I came into the season, and I didn't expect South Carolina to make this a game. But Spencer Rattler is still Spencer Rattler. I mean, he is just I don't know, he will wow you with a throw, but then he'll also make a boneheaded throw. But on Georgia, this defense is just as good as they were last year. And then what they're doing offensively is different this year. They're not leaning on the run game. Like last year with Georgia, it seemed like they kind of shortened the games. Just we're going to run the ball. Stetson Bennett's just going to make the right throws. He's going to manage the game. Not this year. Stetson Bennett's a legit Heisman contender, in my opinion. And what he's doing, and one with his legs and throwing the ball, and the different things they're doing with the tight ends, Brock Bowers, and the running backs. I mean, this team is – I think they're better this year. I mean, what's been your feeling on Georgia so far?
Well, my take with Georgia over this last couple of years is I just felt like they needed to press to score more, because Kirby seemed like Kirby's mentality was play old school. Well, let's get a lead and just run the ball, and just kind of choke you out. But, when you get into these primetime games, you got to be able to score. And I think you're seeing them doing that with a little bit more urgency now. And Tom Monken's done a heck of a job. Still, you can tell Stetson knows the offense in and out. They're actually on some of their throws, it's almost like a run, but but they're the guys attacking all quadrants of the field. They're running Brock Bowers. Dude, Brock Bowers is kind of like a Travis Kelce.
Yes.
I mean, I would put him up there as one of the top 3 players in college football. He's that good. And, this Malachi Starks, the cornerback, he's a true freshman. Already has 2 interceptions, made a huge play in the Oregon game. This kid is a stud. I mean, he's a shutdown corner. I mean, and that's another weapon that they had. And Nolan Smith and the safety that they have. And I don't know. I mean, these dudes, Darnell Washington's a 6'7" tight end. There was one play they threw to him. He was dragging like 5 dudes on his back. I mean, like they can block, and like, what's impressive to me too, watching Kirby Smart, that guy's always coaching, always. I mean, you can just tell he loves it. And, he's doing this at his school that he played for. And Kirby Smart was a great football player. He wasn't big, but he was great. He was a great football player. And I think that dynamic too with him, as far as the players, when you, as a player, you have to respect the fact that your coach was one of the better players ever played at Georgia. And when he gets on to them or they tells them something, they're going to listen, because they know he knows. And that's a big deal, man. And they play with emotion. They're mean. They tackle. They knock your block off. I was telling my son, because my son said something about wanting to play football next year, and I was like, this Georgia Bulldog team right here epitomizes what a good football team is all about. And I don't see them being beat. I think they're going to win the national championship again.
Yeah, I went into the year, my prediction was Alabama to win the national title. I believe these two teams they are going to play each other in Atlanta. And, man, I would be shocked if they play twice again. Maybe some of the voters will try to avoid that the best they can. But, Ohio State's got something to say about that, too, as well. They're a very close offense. But, the way Georgia's playing, it's just they almost seem like they're ticked off. That maybe they felt like they were disrespected coming into the season because, hey, just because we lost 15 guys, we still got other guys. And, honestly, Georgia, Kirby's built Alabama 2.0. That's what they are over there.
I agree. And what did we hear this all season, too? Well, I just don't know about Stetson Bennett. Stetson, he's just kind of a game manager and this and this. I'm like, did you watch the games last year, man? The dude kills people with his feet. Yeah, he's not big, but you know what? Drew Brees wasn't big. Ty Detmer wasn't big. Doug Flutie wasn't big. Hey, man, if nobody can touch you in the pocket, what does that matter? It don't matter. The dude throws a good ball, and it's kind of like a couple of years ago before the season began when Mac Jones took over the start quarterback. And I got on some shows, and I said, well, somebody asked me, who do you think's a sleeper high? I said, Mac Jones. I had a lot of respect for him, the way he went down in the Iron Bowl and played. He threw those 2 picks and got back up and fought back and got his team back in the game. I think that shows a lot about a quarterback when you go through a little adversity and you hang in there. But when you have dudes like Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, Henry Ruggs, Najee Harris, all those dudes, all you got to do is get the ball to him. Mm-hmm. And he has that at Georgia. I mean, all he's got to do is just deliver the ball and let his playmakers work. And, I mean, they're going to put up the stats for him because a 5-yard pass can go into a 70-yard pass just like that. Mm-hmm. And, you know, his protection's excellent, you know, but so I'm with you. I mean, for him to be the best quarterback in the SEC is going to be tough just because of who else is in the league. But right now, I mean, he's one of the best quarterbacks. I mean, period. And he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. And the players that he has around him are phenomenal.
And, you know, talking about them being ticked off, you know what I saw a lot of in the offseason? And this come from Alabama. If we had Jameson Williams and John Minchie, we would have won. And I wonder, too, if that, you know, I said they may be ticked off. And it feels like this team has a chip on their shoulder still. And just hearing that, I mean, they'll never admit it. They'll never admit that they listen to the noise and all that stuff. But I kind of wonder, too, if those comments coming from over in Tuscaloosa kind of have a factor to kind of how they're playing with that little extra chip on their shoulder.
I think, yeah, sure. But I think Kirby has taught them kind of like Saban. That's last season's done. It's over. You know, and nothing too, Phillip. Oh, they lost so much on defense. They lost so much on defense. You know, that was another narrative. They lost so much on defense. Well, that side of the ball is never going to be in question with me as long as Kirby Smart's at Georgia.
Yeah.
Because that's his baby. I don't care who's the supposed defensive coordinator. That Kirby Smart's the defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's his baby. That's his thing. He gets his boys. He coaches them up. They attack. You can't run on them. So therefore, if you can't run on a team, then you're pretty much behind the 8 ball, you know, because when you get in second, third down, I mean, he brings those blitzes and he stunts his linemen and they just get after you, man. I mean, so it's that edge, and I think he learned that under Saban, but I also think he learned that too from his dad and being the type of football player he is. I mean, he was a guy that played with reckless abandon, and his team plays that way.
Oh, absolutely. And we've hit over 31. We hit about 31 minutes now. So just, you know, SEC just kind of through this past weekend and going forward, you know, outside of those teams, especially Alabama and Georgia, anything big really sticking out to you? Just, you know, when it comes to the SEC, what we kind of saw in week 3.
Well, I mean, Tennessee and Florida play this weekend, you know, and first time in a while that game's really going to mean something. Mm-hmm. I don't like the way Florida's playing right now. I think Tennessee might boat race them because the combination of Hendon Hooker and wide receiver Cedric Tillman, to me, that's the best 1-2 pass catch duo in the country. Mm-hmm. Well, Caleb Williams and Jordan Addison might be right there too, but I just think that Tillman kid, there's something special about him. And I think he's one of the best players in the country. I mean, he's big. He can go up and get it. I thought their defense, you know, helping them win the game against Pitt a couple of weeks ago, I thought that was big for their confidence. Mm-hmm. You know, I like the way Ole Miss is playing. Their running game is really, really good. Jackson Dart seems like he's you know, grabbed onto that starting QB job. And Ole Miss's defense is pretty good too now. They got a pretty good defensive line. Their defensive backs are active. So, I'd been impressed with Mississippi State, but I thought some of the play calling against LSU, them going for it on 4th and 1 on the 50 when they're in control of the game and their defense was playing well, I thought that was kind of dumb. And then, of course, you know, one thing I've noticed this year, Phillip, you know, what is the cardinal rule on a punt return inside the 10-yard line?
You let that thing go.
Let that bad boy go, man. You know, and Auburn's receiver trying to make a punt returner, he fielded one inside of 10. He did get a few yards, but Mississippi State's guy inside of 10, they're in control of the game. He muffs a punt. Woo, that changes the game just like that. Mm-hmm. You know, so I still think Mississippi State's a dangerous team, though, and they can beat anybody. But We're about to find out. Arkansas is an intriguing team to me because they can run the ball. KJ Jefferson, and they play physical. So that game with Bama in a couple of weeks is going to be a doozy. But a lot of good teams in the league, man. A lot of good teams in the league and a lot of good players.
Yeah, we're about to hit. Everybody's going to really be getting full swing conference play here soon. So it's going to be intriguing the rest of the year out. I mean, we all Alabama and Georgia's at the top, but the rest of the team, like I said, there's some good teams out there, and away Alabama has shown some chinks in the armor, so they may could be got by one of these teams in the West. But it's going to be fun. And Matt, this has been fun. And before I let you go, one more time, tell everybody about the website.
Yeah, lowdownsports.com. Like I said, I'm going to have my SEC rankings probably tonight or in the morning. I've been working on some stuff, working on some Falcon stuff with Field Level Media. They're an up-and-coming company and a couple of guys that I've worked with. So check them out. They do previews and recaps of pretty much every sport. So it's fieldlevelmedia.com. I'll have some stuff up on there too. Yeah, and I'll have a lowdown, my picks of the week. I'm probably going to post that Thursday this week, and I might do an out and up with a certain guest. Hadn't confirmed that yet. So come check it out, lowdownsports.com.
All right, sounds good, Matt. As always, I appreciate the time, and I look forward to doing it again sometime down the road.
Hey, appreciate it, Phillip. We'll talk to you soon, man.
All right, once again, thanks to Matt Lowe for coming on today's show. Go check out his website, lowdownsports.com, and he has plenty of content going up there about college football and plenty other stuff. And that's going to do it for today's show. Remember, you can follow me on social media at PJordanSEC. The podcast is available on all your favorite podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, just wherever you get your podcasts. You can check out the Phillip Jordan Show. You can check it out over on YouTube, Phillip Jordan Sports YouTube channel. Just hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for all notifications, and also leave a comment on a video. I'll read that on a future edition of the show. Leave a comment on a Apple Podcast review. I'll read that as well. You can always email me at sportstalkphillipjordan@gmail.com. Be back later in the week when we drop some more videos, some more podcasts. So just keep an eye out on the feed and over on YouTube.